Maybach music.
Hey, welcome back everyone to the Progressive Brothers Podcast. This is episode 65. Please hit the like button as you come in. Share the video if possible. And hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Progressive Brothers Podcast. Also, make sure you follow us on Twitter at brothers_podcast. So I had an epiphany today. We did an excellent podcast with my co-host, Renaissance Man, and I started thinking about the Capitol, 1-6. And historically, black men in this country have always defended the state and democracy as an institution. And so what do I mean by this? What I mean is that the social structure or the governance structure of the society, for what it was meant to be on paper, black men have always fought to uphold the state as a nation and democracy as a socio-political body, for lack of a better description, for what it's worth. Even when they did not benefit from the democracy itself, they upheld those ideals. And so, thinking about the Capitol and how some black conservatives want to have Michael Byrd, tried, in front of a jury and for the killing of Ashley Babbitt. I always find this interesting because on one hand, we want to back the blue. On the other hand, only certain types of blue can be backed, and that happens to be white. The rest of them are not worthy of backing. And so the epiphany I had was that it seems that when black men want to defend what they consider to be the liberty and the justice and the pursuit of happiness that this country embodies, people don't want to back that. But when a white person claims that they want to be patriots, only they can be the patriots. Only they can have small governments. Only they can have the constitutional rights of free speech and the right to bear arms. But when you have historic preference, a historic reference for black men upholding the state in the idea of democracy, a lot of that goes out the window for a lot of people. And so I just find this interesting that you have Crispus Attucks, and his ability to be on the front line and stand up to the British. And then you have black men in the civil rights movement, the Civil War, pardon me. Many black men took up arms to defend the Union because the Confederates were not Americans, or at least not according to to their citizenship. They were not a part of the United States for what it was worth. They wanted to eradicate injustices. You had, Reconstruction and the failed project of that was to be a part of the greater society. And then you had World War I, where black men actually took up arms again, even though they were still mistreated in the society, to fight against imperialism in Europe, only to come back home and be mistreated again, having their constitutional rights and civil rights violated. And then you go into World War II. Once again, black men come to the defense of Europeans who were being brutalized and savaged. I just find all of this interesting, that Black men have always fought for democracy in this country and to uphold the state and to travel abroad and defend other people's humanity, but no one wants to defend our humanity. And so I think a lot about this, and this leads all the way up into the civil rights movement, the 1960s, integration of schools. A lot of people say that we were better off, being separated. I don't know where to get that information from. That part of history doesn't exist of being better off prior to 1965. I don't know where to get this from, but democracy and humanity and human rights, civil rights, these sort of things, these sort of ideas are things that black men largely fought for. Not everybody, but the majority did. So what leads us up to 1/6, and you have Michael Byrd and the other brother Eugene, who led the insurrectionists up a flight of stairs into a trap to protect other elected officials and the electoral process. Black men have always stood 10 toes down for the state and for the ideas of democracy in this country. But you get called a leftist, you get called a communist, you get called a socialist, you get called, name your ism and name your slur, and they can throw it at you, but they can never talk about democracy. They can never talk about the protection of the state itself. And so I bring all this up because I thought that was very interesting, that they cared more about a white woman being killed rather than the upholding of democracy through the electoral process in the state capital. That it was more important. This white woman was more important to some of these black conservatives than democracy itself. And so I had this epiphany. I said, how did we get to this point where you have people who can say that they align with conservative principles, but what are you really conserving at that point? A lowly white woman who tried to jump through a window, breaking and entering, and think that that was she had a right to do it because she was a patriot? What about democracy? What about the state structures, the Capitol, the White House, other institutions? What about that? What about the elected officials? What happened to, going about the non-violent way? They chose to go a violent way, and they met their consequences, but somehow a white woman was more important to black conservatives than democracy in the state itself. You have to really ask yourself, how did we get to this point? And so I had this epiphany. I just said, historically, black men have always defended the state. In 1812, they defended the state. In the 1860s, they defended the state again. World War I, World War II. March for civil rights. March for voting rights. And then come January 6th and you have black men to the rescue again. 3 black men defending the Capitol in ways that is unimaginable in other times. That a black man would actually stand 10 toes down against thousands of white people waving flags of Confederacy, rebel flags, and as well as gallows with nooses hanging outside the the institution itself, the Capitol. And you have people who are lining themselves up with this, but they don't really talk about the history of this country. They say it was a great time to be a black man between 1865 and 1931. I don't know that part of history. All I know is what I know right now is that black men have always defended the state. They've always defended the idea of a democracy on paper and in action. So I had this epiphany. I thought I could get it out right now and just really express myself because I thought it needed to be said. Like, share, and subscribe. Follow us on Twitter @brothers_podcast.